Hello there. Welcome back to the I Am Changing podcast. I'm excited to bring this episode to you. This has been a bit of a theme that's been coming up probably really intensely as we entered the end of autumn and migrating into the month of winter. And it's been a seasonal change of big feelings. So today I wanted to share with you how to navigate some of those big feelings and why big feelings can trigger us as parents, but trigger our children as well. So let's break this down a little bit. What are big feelings? Often, when we're triggered and we activate that survival program, that sympathetic nervous system of flight, fight, freeze, or fawn, we're operating from the reptilian brain. We're not using our frontal lobes or our neocortex, those parts of the brain that are creative, that find solutions, that do the logical executive thinking and functioning. And so when we're in the reptilian brain and we're running, we're fighting, we're freezing, we're playing dead, there's not a lot of capacity to process the thoughts and the feelings of the day. And let's be very clear, we can have up to 80,000 thoughts a day. And when we've got those types of thoughts going on that perhaps aren't positive, that are perhaps triggering from different things that have been going on in our life, some of the things that can happen are that when we're not venting off, when we're not, I want you to think of a thought that's negative as a homeless person residing in the presidential suite of your mind. And we need to evict the person who's in the wrong room back down onto the basement, kick them to the curb. This is what we do with our unwanted thoughts. And we do the same with our feelings. And yet, if you're in a survival program, there's not a lot of capacity to be able to think logically, to bring yourself back to that present moment. You're running likely a survival program that's based or formulated on something that's happened before. So you're running a program from the past that got you through that moment way back then, but it's not actually serving you now. And so we become reactive. And when we become reactive, our capacity to express out and own and be present about what those thoughts and feelings are is really quite low. And so this is when we get we over amplify those thoughts and feelings, and we get triggered by our kids. And I often explain to adults when I work with them, when we have big feelings, think of when you're around little people, like a 3-year-old, and they're throwing a tantrum. They're not mature enough yet to have the language that describes anything beyond happy or sad. And so we have to introduce that language to the children. But also, when we have lots of thoughts and feelings, or it becomes overwhelming and it feels like that feeling is consuming us, that becomes a big feeling. And when we can't name it, when we can't express it out, we stamp our feet, or we do something that gets the attention of the parent that says, please come and save me. This is completely smothering me, this feeling right now. And so this is what we mean by big feelings, when the sensation is it can be felt in somatically, when we can feel it in our gut or feel it in our shoulders or feel it in our chest, like anxiety. And so when I work with parents, especially who are triggered by their children experiencing big feelings, we break it down like this. When you see a child distressed, that's your cue. They're cueing you in to stop whatever it is you're doing, as frustrating and as annoying as that can sometimes be. And I acknowledge that, being a parent myself. Get down on their level and just bring your voice down if they're screaming, and console them. And this might take a lot of your energy, and I accept that. And this is how it becomes a big feeling and reaction for you too. And so the idea is, it's like when you're first got a baby and you're looking for the signs of when the child is tired and they yawn, or they scratch at their eyes, or they have that movement that cues you in they're tired, put them straight down. The same goes when we have big feelings. And so when a child is crying or screaming and they go to take that breath, place their hands on their chest. connect them into that heart energy where they can self-soothe. And as we breathe, great, let's take another deep breath and ask the child, are you experiencing big feelings right now? And more often than not, they'll go, yes, I'm experiencing big feelings right now. And so what you're doing is you're giving them permission to change the neuroplasticity of their survival program. And we're simply acknowledging it's okay to have big feelings. It's not okay to hit, scream, kick, whatever, especially if it's your younger brother or sister or the dog or out in public. It can be socially not acceptable and it's embarrassing. But the idea is if you can connect with the child while they're in that moment of the big feelings, you're giving them the gift of teaching them how to self-soothe, and you're starting to introduce the language, it's okay to have big feelings, and let's start naming what the feelings are. And so you're then teaching them how to self-pack, how to regulate what's going on with the emotions. What are you feeling right now? I'm feeling angry. Okay. Where are you storing that anger right now? It's everywhere. You picture the child stamp your feet, shake your sillies out. Let's just breathe and sit with what's making you uncomfortable right now. Because it's actually okay to have this feeling. It's not okay to keep hanging on to it. And when we can teach that child to shift, to self-soothe, to self-regulate their emotions, we're opening up the lines of communication to a space where it's unconditionally communicating. I'll talk to mum and dad, or I'll talk to the safe adult, no matter what, whenever I want. And it'll be okay. I won't be judged. They'll be there to support me. So you're setting up for when the child then enters pre-puberty and enters teenage years, and that's awkward, and they've got hormones as well. You've already put in the ground yards to be able to say, well, what are you feeling right now? And help me understand where you're at. But the reason we can feel triggered as adults is if we've grown up without the adults in our life showing us that it's normal to have feelings and showing us how to release those big feelings. So if you've been taught how to store your emotion, we don't express that, go to your room, sort that shit out. If you've never been taught that you have big feelings and it's okay, we don't swallow them down, then you've got a pattern in you potentially, and it's neither good nor bad, it's just a pattern where perhaps you get very easily overwhelmed and very easily go into big feelings. And this is where practice the pause can be exceptionally useful for you, especially if you've got a beautiful, loving partner or a child around with you that can call you out on, Mum, you've got the crazy eyes going on. Let's just breathe. They use a code word. And so when we practice the pause, it's everyone loving each other and saying we don't need to be exposed to this toxic emotion that is percolating within you, giving you that volcano head reaction, and you let some of the steam out, but you still haven't dealt with what's still bubbling and boiling away inside of you. And so here's what we can do to slow that down and change the neuroplasticity of your reaction. And when we talk about reaction, it's like you've got 20 browsers open at once, and the reaction could be, I'm being annoyed by a child right now, but what's under that is I've had a frustrating day. And what could be under that is I'm frustrated because I'm not heard. And what's under that is I'm frustrated, I'm constantly doing something for someone else. And all of a sudden, the more you start to realize that there's a number of emotions there and that there's a story that you've been telling yourself, you're then identifying the story associated with your original event that happened when you first created this survival program. When you can be present and gift yourself the time to just sit with that first uncomfortable emotion and just breathe, acknowledge it's there, breathe it out. You use that Gabby Bernstein method, choose again. I don't have to be angry right now. Acknowledge it. Use that inner child statement. I'm so sorry you're angry right now. Breathe in and out. And if there's another emotion, is there something else under the anger? Acknowledge that, breathe it out, let it go. Go and bang your pillow on your bed, go and stamp your feet, go and smack an angry sock or a pool noodle on something innate, not a person or an animal. And then breathe. Breathe where your belly rises, not breathe where your chest moves. Breathe so that your belly rises and you can just clear it out and come back to a neutral, present place. When we become neutral, you've turned off the survival program. When we come back to the present, you're back at this choice point, this crossroad where you can continue to escalate once more, or you can choose again. You can choose a different way. You can reframe the situation. And it can be something as simple as I can own my big feelings. Mum's got big feelings today. I need for you guys to just go and play or do something and give me 5 minutes, and I'm going to set the timer. And when you hear the timer come back, I'm going to ask you very nicely, after I apologize for my behavior, to just, can we start again? There's nothing wrong with starting again. There's nothing wrong with choosing again. And there's also nothing wrong with teaching your children it's okay, and even adults have big feelings. Even if you've had the perfect parented childhood, as an adult, we still have days where we have big feelings. And it's okay. I want to normalize this, this ridiculous phenomena that there's no such thing as normal. We have day and we have night, and we have the capacity to roll through day and night in our own unique unicorn individual way. And it just seems that life will put circumstances and obstacles in our way for us to learn lessons of how to navigate day and night differently in an evolved perspective. I learned something the other day, or I reaffirmed a quote that I wanted to share with you. The least comfortable thing for a human being. What do you think that is? And I'll pause and let you try and think of what does the brain need to feel safe and comfortable? And what's the least comfortable thing that, sends a signal to the brain that we're not safe or comfortable? And it's change. And yet change is the one constant thing in our life. And it's probably the one thing that will generate our big feelings. So even as adults, if you can own your big feelings, that creates an invitation, or it creates space for you to become curious and creative of how might you relationship with yourself and others differently if you could own your big feelings. What might life and your outlook of life be like if you could reduce the intensity of those big feelings? What would it be like if you could simply just sit for 30 to 60 seconds in that big feeling, own it and let it go? What might change in your life? And would that be better? Or have you simply been fearful of the alternative of the big feeling, and that's what's immobilized you? Because that's generally where anxiety comes from. If we're avoiding the big feelings, we're then storing that energy of that emotion and that thought and that behavior in our soma, all of our cells that don't have a function, the in-between spaces in our body. So it's not stored in the muscle, it's stored around the muscle. And so the muscle becomes constricted or tightened with that emotional tension. This is how we get tension in our shoulders. We perceive the weight of the world is on our shoulders. And yet when we breathe and can let that weight go, what comes? It's joy. And our shoulders drop and we throw our shoulders back and we can breathe in and we open our heart up for joy, more joy. And so if we have those big feelings, the shoulders roll forward, that turns on our sympathetic nervous system, that flight or fight program. Throw the shoulders back and smile. Did you know that just by smiling, you can't be grumpy? The generation of activation of muscles when you smile and throw back your shoulders is enough to generate a hormone that makes you feel good. So if you can't reframe, if you can't choose again, if you can't connect to your breath, smile and throw your shoulders back and walk swinging your arms smiling. You will feel ridiculous, but you won't look it from the outside. And within seconds, within a minute, you're generating oxytocin, that love hormone. You're generating dopamine and serotonin, that feel good. It's just like scrolling through the browser on your phone when you smile. So, could you smile? Can I create that invitation today? Can you smile at your big feelings? Because when we acknowledge our big feelings, we're adulting. We're being accountable and responsible for those 80,000 thoughts that we have a day. When you're responsible for your thoughts in the day, you start to naturally choose more positive thoughts. And that leads to more positive actions and more positive outcomes just from smiling at life and what it has to offer you. And when you choose to practice the pause, when you choose again, when you choose to reframe something that's triggered you, you're changing your neuroplasticity. And when you do that, you're creating space to change your life. What could be more exciting than that? I'll leave you with that today of what could you change in your thoughts or behavior today. And if you do feel stuck, seek help. It's out there, whether it's myself using kinesiology, hypnosis, meditation, or all of that combined together. Whether it's seeing your therapist, whether it's connecting with friends, a loved one, or a trusted adult to share those big feelings, whether it's getting into your journal. What could you do today to address, to confront, to embrace those big feelings? Because they're one of the biggest things that get in the way of us living our best life. So I'll leave you with that today. What's the one thing you might try today? The choose again, the practice, the pause, the reframing, the talking to the inner child and shifting it out. What could you do today to own your big feelings and change the rest of your life? Hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode, and let me know if you like more of these observations that I have from a clinical perspective. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, as always, you can choose to change and bloom from within.